Alright, video number 3 for the day. It's probably going to be the last video for the day. I have noticed several comments people have left talking about they struggle with trying to figure out load times, in ETA. Especially with ROEHL, all companies do this, but I know with ROEHL, especially with my fleet manager, he is big on asking, what is an ETA for your, arrival to the continent? And I've noticed, I had one person, you'll read the comments, he said he struggled with managing his 70. Flat out, I'll put it this way, flat out, the planners, they're on top of your hours like white on rice and a glass of milk on a paper plate in a snowstorm. They are on it like stink on shit. So they 9.5 times out of 10, they're not going to give you a load that you can't do, even when you're running recap hours. Like somebody in an office somewhere, it's their job to calculate this stuff. So they're not going to give you a run you can't do. Realistically. Now there might be runs where they're tight, so you need to be driving and take as little breaks as possible, and you might have like minutes to spare. Like you'll get runs like that sometimes, but most of the time even on recap hours, they give you runs that you can do, with the time that you have. However, sometimes things happen. Sometimes your fleet manager will ask you, what is an ETA for an arrival to your cons? My second trainer gave me a sheet. This man was brilliant. He was brilliant. Driving trucks for like, him and Jesus got this CDL at the same time. That's how long he's been driving trucks. He was absolutely brilliant. And to this day, I will still use his calculation, which is basically what the company does, which is what ROEHL basically does. They might use a little bit different numbers. They're going to calculate your speed to be a little bit faster than what what you use for this sheet right here. But yeah, that's I use his sheet, and even to this day I'm still using what my trainer gave me. Now, one thing that I will do, like let's say I know I have enough time to get I'm gonna start here before I go into more in depth. This video is probably going to be longer than what I intended it to be. I wanted this to be short, but it's probably going to be longer. Okay, first off, I'm going to start with this. When you come out the gate, you hit the gate running from home time or a 34-hour reset, you have a fresh 70. Like, you don't need to be sitting there worrying about, do you have the hours to do this load? Like, you have a fresh 70. You have the hours. You can't possibly get any more hours than what you have. So, you need to be driving your 10-11 hours, take your 10-hour break. Driving your 10-11 hours, taking your 10-hour break. Driving your 10-11 hours, taking your 10-hour break. It's easy to be doing runs when you have 70 hours, 60, 50, 40, 30. What happens when you start getting down to 20s and the teens? That's when people start getting a little bit, because that's basically a day and a half worth of work right there. It kind of will worry people, like, I'm really not sure how to calculate that time. This is how I personally do it. Like right now, I have a load that delivers technically at 11 a.m. tomorrow, but my fleet manager said traffic in that area is bad, which I already know because I'm from Georgia. I already know how traffic is, but I appreciate the heads up that he gave me. But basically, I have 97.5 miles to go. I typically like to do this, and this will play into also the calculation I'm going to give you to help you figure out what your ETA to wherever is. I personally do this. I will say, all right, right now currently have 97.5 miles to drive in the morning to get to the place I need to deliver at by 7 a.m. I will round up to say I have 100 miles, and I will calculate it at 50 miles an hour, even though I know that I will average about 60, a little bit more. The trucks are governed at 65. Big mistake that people do. If your truck, whatever your truck is governed at, do not calculate that governed speed for your actual miles per hour, because you have to factor in traffic, hills, deer might run out on the roadway. There's so many factors that you're not going to hit the ground running. You're not going to average. My truck does 65. I will not average 65 miles an hour for each hour. That is not going to happen. Like I said, you're in a semi truck, you're not in the car. You're going to speed up, you're going to slow down, people want to cut you off. There's so many factors, weather, everything. Do not say, well, if I have to drive 130 miles in the morning to get to wherever I gotta go, I'm gonna calculate 130 divided by 65. You're going to be wrong, because you're not going to do 65 consistently. So I like to say roughly, if you're feeling froggy and you're feeling yourself, in my mind, like I said, in the morning I have 97 and a half miles to go. I'm going to round up to 100 miles, and then I'm going to calculate that 100 miles, how long it's going to take me to do 100 miles at 50 miles an hour. I personally know from experience on my truck, I know I average about 60 miles an hour. Even though I run 65, hills, factors, I'll normally set it about 60 miles an hour. I personally like to factor in error and say I'll do 50 miles an hour. So with that being said, rounding the 97.5 up to 100. 100 miles divided by 50 miles per hour means it will take me 2 hours to do that. Now, I also like to leave a little bit of error. So on top of that 2 hours, I will add an additional 2 hours. Now, the error is already built in your fact that you're saying you're averaging 50 miles an hour. Nobody gets on the interstate and drives 50 miles an hour. But I like to say that I do. I'll say that, all right, I have 100 miles to go. I'll round up a little bit. If I have to do 50 miles, I'm not going to round up to 100. Round up to the nearest even number, basically, is what I'm saying. If you're at 32 miles, just go ahead and round up to 40. Doesn't hurt anybody. If right now I'm at 97.5 miles, so I'm just going to round up to 100. Just round up to the nearest tenth, all right? Don't round down, because you don't take away distance, but it's always safer to bet in the side of error that you're going to add distance. So don't say, oh, I have 32 miles, I'm just going to calculate it at 30 miles. You're literally cutting 2 miles off the trip. But if you say 32 miles, technically 40 miles, you're adding in the fact that you might make a wrong turn somewhere. You might, the factory might say, and this will happen too, trusting that co-pilot will get you messed up and get you fucked up in the game out here. You'll say, oh, I only have 32 miles to go, I'm going to calculate it at 30. Sometimes you get to some of these factories. I went to one factory up in New York. When I tell you this place was massive, like literally it was the factory and then the town was built within the factory. It covered several city blocks. Like literally several blocks. So you would have to factor in, you might get to some of these places, the GPS will route you to the front door. What happens if you're not going straight to the front door? So factor in that area. If you're at 32 miles, round up to 40 miles. If you like what I'm doing, if I'm at 97.5 miles, round up to 100 miles, just to be on the safe side. So, and this works for things that you can do in a day, in one day. I know for my stamina, I know that at bare minimum on a bad day, if I just don't feel like driving, I'll turn 500 miles. So if I stop anywhere between 500 miles or less, I'll do this calculation that I use right now. I will say that all right, I have 97.5 miles to go, basically 100 miles. 100 miles divided by 50 miles an hour leaves me with 2 hours. In fact, that's a little bit of error built in right there. And just in case I run into traffic, I run into a car accident, something happens on the road, I put on 2 more hours on top of that. So when dispatch says, what is your ETA? Or I'm on my 10-hour break right now, when my 10 hours is up, before I start my shift, I will say, all right, I will send dispatch this message, all right? If it is 1 o'clock in the morning and it's going to take me 4 hours to get there because I calculated 4 hours with the built-in error, 100 miles divided by 2, divided by 50 equals 2 hours plus an additional 2 hours. That's 4 hours to go 100 miles, even though I know I'll do in about 1 hour and 40 minutes. But I will give myself 4 hours to do 100 miles. If I know I need to deliver at 7, which I do, my wheels need to be turning by 3 a.m. You see how that works? Now what's going to happen is you'll send in that free-form message whenever I get a trainee. After I go to the training school, whenever I get a trainee, I will definitely teach them about this. My first trainer, we didn't really worry about that too much, but my second trainer, he was an owner-operator. So he governed by the company's rules, but at the same time, he didn't have to do what the company wanted him to do because he owned the truck. So as far as sending messages and macro 16, macro 18, message 61, all those kind of things, I had to learn that on my own once I got my own truck, because I didn't really have to deal with that with either one of the trainers. And that it's impossible for a trainer to teach you everything. But when I start training students, I will definitely teach them about sending messages, because you'll have some fleet managers who, like, they're not big on talking on the phone, they're very big on sending messages. But anyway, back to the topic. I've given myself 4 hours. My wheels need to be turning by 3 a.m. so I can make my 7 a.m. appointment. I will send a freeform message saying ETA to shipper, ETA to cons, 7 a.m. What's going to happen is they're going to update that in your workflow, and you'll look at your workflow and it says, all right, arrival time 7 a.m. What's going to happen is you're not going to have a service failure, because you're going to go 100 miles in way less than 4 hours. So what's going to happen is they'll update that time in there. They will go and update that in your workflow. Once you arrive there, it'll ask you, have you arrived to such and such place? Or if it doesn't ask you, just click the arrive button. It will show up that you made it there on time. You never want to have a service failure, so make sure you stay in contact with your fleet managers, your dispatchers, whomever. Stay in contact, even if you're going to be 5 minutes late, even if you're going to be 1 minute late. Call them up. Hey, got stuck at a light. Dude got hit by a car right in front of me. Like, I'm right around the corner from the place, but I'm stuck here. I'll be there in like 20 minutes, even though I'm right around the corner. As long as you let them know, it will not be a service failure. But anyway, here's the formula. I'm gonna describe it to you. What you want to do is this. Basically, let's say you have a long load, like they give you something that's like 1,600 miles. Okay, and I'll actually do the math too. I'll actually do the math as well to give a better representation, help out a little bit. Let's say you have a load that is 1,800 miles, all right? And they'll dispatch you your load they'll dispatch you a load, like right now I got my pre-plan for my next load after I deliver this one in the morning, so I already know what I gotta do next. What you need to do is this. Let's see if I have a better pen, because this pen right here has a mind of its own sometimes. Here we go. What you need to do is this, all right? Previous load drive time. You need to calculate that. Okay, right now, like I said, I have 100 miles to go. I already calculated that at 4 hours. I have a live unload. I need to calculate that live unload at 1 hour, all right? Now, this is where you can get a pad and pen and write this down. This is how you calculate how long it will take you to get somewhere. Your ROEHL sends workflows in how many miles you will have to go empty to get to the place to pick up, and how many miles it is loaded to get to the place. So I'll actually use the numbers I have here for my next load. All right, empty miles, I have to go 32 miles to pick up my next load, and then I have to go 856 miles to pick up to once I'm loaded. 856 miles to the destination. Where is the calculator? So 32 plus 856, 32 plus 856, that equals 888 miles. Now, you need to calculate how long it will take you to drive 888 miles. Like I said, use 50 miles an hour divided by 50. 888 miles divided by 50 miles per hour will give you 17.76 hours. Just round that to 18 hours. 18 hours of drive time. All right? Now, you have to do a DOT break, a 10-hour break for every 10 hours of driving. So with that being said, you just calculated how much drive time you need. That's 18 hours of drive time, which means you need to have one 10-hour break in that. Because like I just said, a DOT break, a 10-hour break for every 10 hours of drive time. So, you have 18 hours of drive time. Now how many DOT breaks will you have? You'll have one DOT break. So you have a 10-hour break in there. It should take you, technically on the logbook, you need to show 15 minutes for pre-tripping. Alright? So a pre-trip, how many days will you have to do a pre-trip? Alright? You have to do pre-trip for both days that you'll start driving. Alright? Or so you need to do 0.25, because remember, the scale is, I'm going to show you the scale. 0.25 equals 15 minutes. 0.5 equals 30 minutes. 0.75 equals 45 minutes. And 1 equals 1 hour. Now, I will have to do 2 pre-trips because I'll drive my 10 hours, take my 10-hour break. So that day, pre-trip, drive 10 hours, take a 10-hour break. Pre-trip, drive the 8 hours, make the delivery. Alright? So, 10-hour break, pre-trip, 0.25 per day. I have to do 2 pre-trips. So that's going to be 0.5 hours. You need to do several vehicle checks each day. You need to do at least 2. Vehicle check is at least 15 minutes. So that being said, you're going to do 2 vehicle checks per day. So that's 30 minutes for the first day, 30 minutes for the second day. That's 1 hour. You need to take a 30-minute lunch break. The 30-minute break that's required for the 8-hour working period. So you need to do 1 for the first day, 1 for the second day. That's 1 hour. At least 30 minutes of fuel per day. You're probably going to fuel up every other day. Just calculate it as if you're fueling up every single day. So, fuel up the first day, fuel up the second day. That's 1 hour. Alright? Now, before you pick up this load, you need to understand, is this a live load or is this a preloaded trailer? If this is a preloaded trailer, it should take you about, it's going to take you less time, but to be on the safe side, we go on the side of error. Calculate that a preloaded trailer, from the time you get to the facility that you're picking it up to the time you leave, it will take you an hour. And if it's a live load, calculate 2 hours. We're going to go ahead and say that it's a preloaded trailer, so it's going to take you 1 hour. Now, this is the part that gets people messed up. You need to know what time zone you're going to be in. You need to know what time zone you're making this delivery in. Are you going to a time zone that's ahead of yours? So are you technically losing an hour of driving time? Or are you going and making a delivery in California and you're out here in Georgia? So technically you get to gain 3 hours because the time goes backwards the further to the west coast you go. So if you're making a delivery in California, you technically gain 3 hours, which means you need to technically lose 3 hours. And I don't mean lose 3 hours. You lose the amount of time it takes you to drive. Basically, let's put it this way. If you're going towards California, you need to start subtracting time. If you're going away, add it. But it depends on what time zone you're currently in. If you're in Eastern Standard Time and you're making delivery in, Pacific Time, you need to subtract 3 hours because they're 3 hours behind. If you're in Mountain Time and you're making a delivery in Central Time, you need to add an hour because you're moving forward 1 hour. So let's say you're technically not changing time zones. You're going to be in the same time zone. I'm just going to leave that at 0. All right. What you will do is you will add all those numbers together. 4 hours for the previous load that I'm on currently, plus 1 hour. 4 hours plus 1 hour of unload, plus 18 hours of drive, plus one 10-hour break, plus 2 pre-trips, which is a half an hour, plus 1 hour worth of vehicle checks per day, plus a 1 hour lunch because you have to have 2 lunches, plus 1 hour of fueling because you gotta get fuel both days. And then to finish the current load you're on, it's going to be it's a preloaded trailer, so you're dropping this one and picking up the other one. So that's 1 hour of that. that equals 37.5 hours total. 37.5 hours from this second is how long it will take you to deliver this load. So right now for me it is currently 8:50. 37 hours, I'm just going to round up to 38 instead of saying 37.5. 38 hours from 8:50 is when I should be able to deliver this load. So today is the what? Today is the 16th, 17th. Alright, so 38 hours, so 24 hours will be 8:50 on the 18th, 8:50 p.m. on the 18th. Alright, and then 12 hours from then will be 8:50 in the morning on the 19th, and then add the 2 hours, 11 a.m. on the 19th. So you will call dispatch and say, they'll ask you for your ETA. You'll say, I can have an ETA of 11 a.m. on the 19th. And actually, that they'll give you extra time, but because I'm running recap hours right now, I technically have to deliver on the 20th. But this is where it also comes into factor. This, you need to understand, if you have the drive time, this works perfectly if you have 40, 50, 60, a full 70, 30 hours to do a load. What happens if you get low on hours and you're running recap? How you have the drive time, all right? How many days is it going to take you of recap hours to hit that drive time? So let's say I'm getting recapping 6 hours today, 6 hours the next day, 6 hours the day after that. That's 3 days right there, because you have to wait till midnight. So technically that's 3 days there, and that alters all the numbers. You need to alter the numbers accordingly. Alright, so still going to be 18 hours worth of drive time. How many DOT 10-hour breaks are you going to have to have? Alright, you're going to have 3, because you got to wait 3 days. So that's 30 hours right there. Alright, how many pre-trips? You're going to have to do 3 separate pre-trips, because you're starting 3 different days. So that's, 1.5 hours, right? Excuse me, that's what is that? That's 45 minutes. That's 0.75 hours right there. Vehicle checks per day. That's going to be 1.5 hours worth of vehicle checks. 1.5 worth of hours of lunch. 1.5 hours worth of fuel. The preload and the live load and the preload are going to be the same. That will push your ETA out. And that's how you calculate how long it will take you to do a load. So yeah, I'll try to give a close-up view of this. This is a great thing to write down. Right here, I'm going to hold it up to the camera for a second. Actually, that's terrible quality. That's fucking terrible quality. Just shoot me an email saying you would like a copy of it, and I will rewrite it out, take a picture, and email it to whoever would like a copy of it. My trainer taught me this, and I will say I have been using this consistently, and I have yet to have it fail. So obviously it works. But yes, that is how you calculate your ETA to get to a shipper, cons, or wherever you need to get to. That's how you're going to communicate with dispatch and letting them know how long it will take you. And always stay in contact with your fleet manager, stay in contact with dispatch, let them know what's going on. Make sure you use the computer, use all the tools you have available to you. And yeah, drive safe, keep the left door shut and that hammer down, and get those miles. Alright guys, have any other questions or comments or concerns, slide into the email. If you like what you saw, like, comment, and subscribe. Have a wonderful night.